Hello everyone, welcome back to Leaders Whiteboard session 16. Today we will talk about hidden biases for performance reviews. In our last session, in session 15, we talked about another performance review topic, which was performance versus potential metrics 3 into 3 grid. We call it 9-box grid, right? So because it is the performance review session, so I thought let's continue the discussion on another relevant topic for performance review. So what are the hidden biases we want to talk about? There are many, numerous. The reason I'm calling these biases hidden biases that we will discuss today, common types of hidden biases, is because some of those we may not be actually aware of. We may think we are doing the right thing, but actually maybe we are not doing the right thing. So that's why it's very important that we are fair in our evaluation when we are performing, when we are providing feedback to our peers, or when we are self-reviewing or giving feedback to manager, or in general, as a manager, let's say we are reviewing our direct report. Anywhere where feedback or reviewing or evaluation of someone's work, behavior, or performance is involved, these biases may creep up, or even during your interviews, like engineering interviews and so on. So that's why if we are aware of it, then that will be the first step towards the right direction to eliminate those biases so that the whole system becomes more fair and less unjust. Okay. Here are those biases that we'll talk about today. Some of those just to wrap our head around before we go deep into it, like recency bias, halo effect, horns effect, confirmation bias, similarity bias, contrast effect, leniency or severity bias, central tendency bias, gender bias, age bias, faith bias, affinity bias, attribution bias, group attribution error, cultural bias, name bias, beauty bias, maternity bias, overconfident bias. So the first one is recency bias. It's about overemphasizing an employee's most recent behavior or performance while undervaluing past performance. What it means is that, let's say, um, you are supposed to evaluate your direct report's performance for quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, and quarter four. And the employee has had a bad performance in quarter and quarter two, but has turned around. And in quarter three and quarter four, the employee did some amazing job. So when you are evaluating end of the year, you are supposed to evaluate for the whole year their performance, all the projects delivered, not only the recent projects delivered and so on. So while you definitely emphasize this turnaround, that your direct report moved into a positive trend, you have also have to keep in mind the learning or the drawbacks they had early in the year, so that you put different weightage for different quarters of time. That's fine, but at least you don't give a zero weightage on the earlier performance. It has to be a non-zero weightage basically. So you consider both their overall trend of work over the whole year rather than just the last few weeks or months. You remember, you are very impressed about the last project that they delivered and so on. So they should not exclude you from considering the other deliverables of the earlier time within the same year or within the same performance review cycle. So recency bias, and this is something is very common in our industry. Like it happens a lot psychologically for managers or anyone remembering only the good or only the bad things. It's not just about good. The opposite is true. Yes, someone did some bad performance, the project didn't deliver the last quarter or something. That should not let you forget all the good deeds they did in quarter one or quarter two or earlier in the same year. So you have to give a non-zero weightage to there as well. That's the recency bias. So the second one we'll go is halo effect. What is halo effect? It's allowing an overall positive impression of a person to positively influence the evaluation of their specific traits or behaviors. So, for example, let's say you think a person is a good person. Hmm. So even if they do an average work, you tend to make it, oh, the work must be good because he did it or they did it or she did it. Right? That is haloeffect. The overall positive impression of a person is good, but when you're evaluating a particular task, you have to evaluate that task based on its outcome or result, not the overall impression of this person. Whether the overall impression of this person maybe was bad, but the task was good, you still have to evaluate positively for that good work, even if the overall impression of that person in some other context for you is bad. So this is the halo effect. It goes both way, good or bad. Number three, Horn's effect. What is that? Horn's effect is actually the opposite of halo effect. This is just the negative part of it, allowing a negative overall impression to negatively influence assessments of a specific traits or behaviors. So halo effect is you put more positive evaluation based on an impression of a person rather than just the task. Horn's effect is the negative. If a person's impression is overall impression is not so good or negative to you, even if that person does something good, you don't evaluate it that much positive. That's the Horn's effect. Yeah. Confirmation bias. This is a very big one, and not only just for performance review or interview, job interview, or promotion or any other things. It happens all throughout our life. What is it? This is looking for and giving more weight to information that confirms pre-existing beliefs about an employee. You already think that person is a good worker or a good employee or a good manager or whatever it is. But even if they didn't perform very well, you review them as good because you are only finding their good. You are confirming that confirmation bias, the good things, while you are showing blind spot on where they failed. Or you think this person was supposed to work in a certain way, and as soon as you get some positive sign about this person's work, you are not looking for 360 degree feedback or other areas where maybe the person may not have been successful that much. As soon as you got the first one, or the first time you got something that matches with your perception, you are confirming with that data or that finding of yours and making an overall assessment or evaluation that this person is this A, B, or C, or positive or negative. Confirmation bias. Again, it can go either way. Confirmation bias in a positive way or negative way, but either way, we need to be careful about confirmation bias. The next one is similarity bias. It is favoring employees who share similar characteristics or interests with the reviewer, like you. Let's say, let's give an example. Let's say you like playing chess. So one of your direct report is also a good chess player. So irrespective of their work, you demonstrate the similarity bias when you review their work a little bit more highly compared to what they deserve. That is the similarity bias. Contrast effect. This is an important one that we managers should all remember. This is comparing employees against one another instead of against standard performance metrics. So every company has a job career ladder, or you have a job description role. There is a standard, like in your role, or in your direct reports role, what they should do, what's the standard expectation, and you evaluate them based on that standard expectation. Now, in the same team, let's say another person is in a similar role and they did amazingly well compared to that standard job, but that is, let's say, your direct report number 2 did amazing, and then your first direct report 1 also did good against the standard job description or performance metrics, but you are rating your employee number 1 relatively worse or bad. Is that, no, compared to my employee number 2, he is far behind, so maybe he needs a lot of improvement. While this your employee number 1 is possibly just doing very good or fine or doing as good as the job needs them to do. So don't compare your engineers against each other. Compare them against a common standard job performance. Based on that performance, how they are doing, rather than who else in the team is doing good or bad. That is the contrast effect. The next one is called leniency bias or severity bias. This is an important one too. This is about being too lenient or too harsh in evaluating all employees due to a skewed perception of what constitutes average performance. This is similar to, like, you don't know what's the standard expectation from their job's role. So you are making the expectation from that role. Let's say from a senior software engineer, you cannot expect a principal architect kind of performance, right? That's not possible. They're just a senior software engineer. So you are punishing a senior software engineer too harshly because they could not design a distributed distributed systems very efficiently. Well, a senior software engineer will be able to go to a certain level, but compared to an architect or a principal architect, they will be far behind on that. You cannot evaluate them at that level, right? So you are being too harsh. And vice versa. Let's say there is a principal architect and the company expects a lot from that role, but the principal architect is probably coding very well, like at a staff engineer level or senior software engineer level. And because they code very well, you think, oh, this is good enough. You're too lenient. Compared to their role, they are not performing very well, but compared to maybe other team members or in general as a manager, they are helping you a lot, whatever they're doing, because they are good engineers end of the day. You are too lenient to evaluate them for further improvement on their particular skill set that is required from them. So this is the leniency or severity bias. You have to know that for each role, the expectation is different, and everyone has to perform against their role's expectation. Not just an absolute number or absolute unit. It's relatively against their own job description or expectation that's set by them, by their manager. There is another one. This is very interesting, and I have seen it happening quite a lot of time. This is called central number 8. This is central tendency bias. What is central tendency bias? This is rating everyone near the average or middle of the scale, avoiding high or low extremes. For example, let's say you have 10 engineers and you have 3 levels at which you can evaluate them during performance evaluation. Bad, okay, very good. You don't give anyone very good, you don't give anyone bad either. You give everyone just okay or good. In standard term, we call it, let's say, underperformer, meets expectation, exceeds expectation, outstanding performance. So you tend to stay around meets expectation or meets expectation and exceeds expectation. You never give them anyone outstanding performer, even if they are outstanding. You simply just don't want to go to the extreme, and you never mark anyone as underperformer, because what happens to their job and so on, whatever you don't want to. Maybe you failed as a manager, right? So you want to just show them as meets expectation average. This is the central tendency bias. So we should evaluate people based on their performance. The performance, if it is bad, you have to put them underperformer. If this is outstanding, you have to put them outstanding. In the both extremes, you have to use. Don't avoid high or low extremes. That's the that's this bias talks about central tendency bias. Number 9 is gender bias. It's very common. Everyone knows it is allowing stereotypes or assumptions based on gender to influence the review. So definitely there are state laws, country laws, your HR system has laws. You cannot demonstrate gender bias while evaluating or working with your coworkers or your direct reports. Completely not acceptable, and this is just that. There is another one, age bias. Sometimes people call ageism, and unfortunately, in the tech world, ageism is real. So age bias. What is it? It is bias based on the age of the employee with assumptions about capability or potential. So age doesn't matter. What matters is the work or the performance. That's what this age bias is talking about. Faith bias. This is also an important one. Like this is about having bias based on religion as well as presence or absence of faith. So you should be evaluating someone's work, not their faith, just like not their gender, not their faith system. Whether they have faith or not, or if they have faith, what kind of faith they have. None of this is your business as a manager. All you need to know is how is their work. That is another point that faith bias reminds us. The next one, number 12, is affinity bias. What is this? Affinity bias is giving preferential treatment to those who are liked personally, regardless of their performance. Simply, one of your buddy you have hired in your team, no matter how do they perform, good or bad, you always give them good review. That's the affinity bias. So you should not give any preferential treatment to anyone in the team to make the review system fair and just. Number 13, attribution bias. This is attributing success or failure to the wrong factors, like assuming an employee's success is due to luck rather than skill, or their failure is due to lack of effort rather than external factors. So maybe the employee didn't perform well, but we are saying, oh, this is not the employee's problem. This is simply we went into the wrong market or something like that. So these are attribution bias, where you actually don't focus on what was the right reason for the success or failure, and you evaluate based on that right reason. Instead, if you evaluate on a different bias and on a different factor showing your attribution bias, that's not good for the performance review. Number 14, group attribution error. Assuming individual members of a group, like a big department or team, all share the same characteristics or performance levels. For example, let's say there was a project very successful from a team, and some of the team members performed very well, some others didn't do as good as you. But group attribution error would be you give a very high review to all of them because you are so happy the project was successful. So not only the good performers were rewarded, even bad performers were rewarded, and the vice versa. A project failed, there were some team members who successfully delivered their promise or their commitment, but some other people, it's a team game, right? Some other people didn't perform well, so the project failed. And you punish everyone the same way, irrespective of whether they finished their part of commitment or not. The exactly same way, that is group attribution error. We should avoid that. Number 15 is another variation of many biases we have already talked about, which is cultural bias. Having expectations or making assumptions about employees based on their cultural background. We should not do that. Culture, ethnicity, gender, religion, skin color, nothing matters. Yeah, only your work matters. That has to be your part of your review. Number 16 is name bias. This is rare, but this can be correlated to some other biases. Is that name bias is making assumptions based on a person's name, which can be related to gender, ethnicity, or cultural background. Like you're inherently assuming from the name that maybe this person is related to that particular gender, ethnicity, or cultural background, which should not be, which is not something you should be evaluating. You should be evaluating that performer's work, right? You're doing employees' work. Their name doesn't matter. That's what it talks about. Number 17, beauty bias. The beauty bias is the tendency to rate better looking people as more capable or competent. So that also is another bias we should avoid. Maternity bias is making assumptions about work commitment or professional capability because an employee is a new parent or expecting. Like your performance review should have nothing to do with whether that person is a new parent or about to be parent. You are reviewing them based on their work and their future potential. And in a company, we have parental leave, maternity leave, and all those. Employees will the company support those so that employees can take care of their work-life balance, not just work, right? They also contribute to the company. Also, if they are good, they will be able to generate more revenue for the company. So they will go through the usual process if events like that happens. That should have nothing to do with the performance review of that employee. That's what maternity bias is talking about. And the last, number 19, that I have in my list is overconfidence bias. This is overestimating one's ability to evaluate employees objectively without being influenced by personal biases. If you think that, no, I am a very experienced manager, I don't get into any of those biases, and then you evaluate people, okay, if I thought that person's performance is bad, it is bad. So you are very confident, like you think your gut feeling is very good, that would be wrong. That is overconfidence, because biases are there with every one of us, a little bit or maybe a lot, but we have it. So don't be very overconfident that you don't have any biases and then start making consequences. So these are the ones that I thought it's better to know as a manager, not only as a manager, but also as a PR in a team where we provide a lot of feedback to other team members and so on. Even you can observe these kind of biases and you can get better yourself so that you don't demonstrate those biases during interview, like when you're hiring engineers in your team or hiring some other team members. These are some of the things that you should be careful about. So I would like to know if there are some other biases that I haven't thought about that are common or hidden biases and should have been included in this list. Do you have a few like this? If you have, please add a comment in this YouTube video and I will add it or include it for the next time. If this video was useful, please like and subscribe to this channel so that when I come back with a new episode, you get automatically notified. I'm curious to know, what do you think about your own biases? Do you you have some of these biases or none of those. I am also curious to know it. I know that I have some of those biases, and I am working on those things. I have been working on those biases, particularly after I became manager several years back. So we all have work to do. So as long as we can acknowledge, we can work to improve this. So that will be my call for you. Thank you, and I'll come back with a new episode for you. Take care. Bye.